All right. Well, there's no one I'd rather be kicking off this next season, coming back from a bit of a hiatus from Facebook Live. My name is Uri Schneider, here with Paula Mumy. I feel like we talk about the Tin Man and the lion who didn't have his courage, and I click my heels and I say, hey, I could be in Kansas. Here we are. So Paula Mumy on the ground in Kansas, or we can click our heels and go into some other space. But it's a big honor and privilege. We've got some cool things going on. In case you are just coming to the party, before I tell you more about Paula and Spero Stuttering, we've got this gratitude challenge going. And I'm going to share one quick anecdote that's already had a big impact in my everyday life, my not virtual life, but my actual real life. You can go to transcendingstuttering.co. It's a free challenge for people who stutter and for SLPs. And we have a wonderful person, Marie. She's on Instagram at Thanks Morris. She's crafted some incredible prompts. Now, before we even got started, she said, just start thinking about something you're grateful for as we kick off. And today, Thursday, we posted the first prompt. It's going to be 14 days, 7 prompts. You can take as little as 30 seconds or as much as 5 minutes to reflect. So it hadn't even started yet, but it was on my consciousness. And I came into work yesterday and I see the janitor and he's doing what he does every day. And it occurred to me, what would it be like if he didn't do what he's doing right now? The floors would be dusty. There wouldn't be hand towels when you go to the bathroom to wash your hands, hopefully. Things wouldn't be as tidy. Things wouldn't be as clean and fresh to walk in and do the work that you do. So the first thing was I felt gratitude. I had a moment of acknowledgement. And then I said, you know what? Let me verbalize it. And I took the time, walked over to the fellow, and I said, I just want to thank you. There are a lot of people that have done this job and didn't do it with such a smile, such grace. So let's say thank you. Not only did he light up, it changed the rest of my day. So I'm just sharing how small exercises of intention, like this gratitude challenge, can have an impact far beyond those 30 seconds. And it just takes a commitment of, I'm going to try something with a community of people. Let's see what happens. And you see what other people are grateful for, and you come up with things that you've been enjoying but not really savoring, or as my father likes to say, letting it percolate like a good brewed coffee. So without further ado, again, that's transcendingstuttering.co. That's the new address for all transcending stuttering things. Let me share with you with whom we have the honor this morning. Paula Mumy is not just anybody. She was part of one of the first cohorts of Transcending Stuttering, but that's not her biggest claim to fame. She's the president and co-founder of SperoStuttering.org. She's a trilingual speech-language pathologist and clinical assistant professor in the speech-language hearing department at the University of Kansas. She facilitates the clinical team at the Language Acquisition Preschool and the Fluency team at the, help me on this one, Schiefelbusch. I'll be Uri Schneider and they'll be Schiefelbusch. The Schiefelbusch Clinic. She teaches the Graduate Fluency Disorders course at KU, co-leads an adult chapter of the National Stuttering Association, and if that wasn't enough, she's also currently pursuing a clinical doctorate as well as board certification as a fluency specialist. On the side, Paula enjoys singing, writing, reading, and traveling with her husband and 2 kids, who I had the privilege to meet in Austin, Texas. That was like the highlight of the conference. And if you haven't heard a good song lately, you can check out her latest share in honor of ISAD, International Stuttering Awareness Day, a beautiful, stunning composition written and performed by Paula and shared with great courage. And without further ado, Paula, welcome to Transcending Stuttering podcast.
Thank you.
What would you want to share with people that's not on that wonderful intro? There's so much more to all of us behind the intros on the websites. What would you want people to know that doesn't appear there?
So I would say, well, tying it to even why I'm here and just kind of my journey of formation to get me to this place of being involved in the stuttering community. I would say, as you know, I'm a Christian, and I believe that God has me here for a purpose, and I feel like just there's so much intertwined with how I'm here in terms of just my belief that God is directing my steps and really kind of orchestrated things in my life in such a way that has brought me to this place. And so I think that would be one aspect that maybe doesn't come out in other locations or avenues of just, bios and that kind of thing. And I would say too, stuttering, I say that stuttering found me. I wasn't looking for stuttering. And the catalyst was my son. Some of you probably have heard that. He started to stutter when he was about three and a half. And I had been an SLP at that point for 15 years, and then just realized how inadequate I felt and how little I knew, and really just didn't even know, where to begin. And so that was kind of the beginning of my journey. So yeah, that would be my, I guess, the maybe less publicized part of my journey.
I think that's awesome. Yeah, I never knew that was a piece. So that's really cool. I remember, we all juggle how we show up for different meetings. And I do remember that in the cohort, you were in your pickup truck sometimes coming back from Sunday morning services, and the intersectionality, very literally, of different roles and different places that we show up. That's awesome. That's awesome. So I think that's fascinating how we all got to where we are, what we're doing, where we're going. So you want to share a little bit more, like how stuttering found you, what that process was, and obviously how that may have flowed into where you find yourself as the president of the Spero Stuttering Inc. Foundation.
Yeah, so the very first thing that I did when I realized how little I knew, or, just in my sense of inadequacy and just not really knowing where to start, I just started Googling what preschool webinars might be available, or because my son was preschool age at that time. And so I found the preschool webinar on the Stuttering Foundation website by Kristen Camella, which was very good. And just, I felt really just, some direction there. And I loved Kristen so much. I'm like, I'm going to check her out a little bit further, and then learned that she, of course, directs the Camp Shout Out camp for children who stutter. And I learned that I could go as a trainee, as an SLP trainee, and did that right away. There was an opportunity in August of that year, 2015, and Camp Shout Out really changed me. I think as a parent and as a professional, there was just so much it was just a beautiful experience. Kristen and Julie are amazing leaders of that experience. And I just came away just having heard the stories of those children and just spending time with them for that, full week. And really being kind of in the minority as far as a person who doesn't stutter, right? And just met beautiful people, and I really walked away from that experience feeling like this is my calling, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Even though I loved speech language pathology, the 15 years that I had been practicing, and I felt like I was doing things that I enjoyed, and the area that I was most involved in was working with bilingual families because I'm trilingual. And that kind of had been my niche, or just the area that I had focused on for a lot of years. But I just felt this sense of like, this is my purpose. This is what God is calling me to devote more time to. And so that year I submitted this creative piece to the International Stuttering Awareness Day online conference. And through that, I met amazing people. And I also met Daniela in Brazil, who is doing amazing work, along with Luciana with the Oficina de Fluência, which is a fluency workshop. That's kind of the best translation for their organization, but they're doing a lot of training there for speech language pathologists, largely because of similar reasons that we just don't get enough training in this area. So anyway, that just opened a lot of doors and connections that I didn't have before. And I would say too, early on, I ran into or across your dad's Transcending stuttering documentaries, and that was very powerful, and just love hearing him. And anytime that I get the chance, I take that opportunity, like I did was it this week or last week with the counseling?
Last Thursday.
Yeah, last
Art
Thursday.
of counseling, yeah.
Yep, so that was awesome. And anyway, so I just was soaking everything up. I was trying to just become involved in as many things as I could. I became a chapter leader with the National Stuttering Association. Then in 2017, I went back to Camp Shout Out, met John Gomez, and was able to attend the When I Stutter screening in Kansas City that same year, which was amazing. And really it was the first time, so my husband was able to go with me that year to that screening and watch the documentary with me. And it was like the first time that he really understood, like, why is Anna Paula spending this much time on this? And like, why has she been captivated and consumed with stuttering now for the last 2 years? Because by that time, I think our son, the stuttering did resolve. For him, what persisted was Tourette's. So he does have Tourette's syndrome, and it's thankfully relatively mild, I would say. At this point, it fluctuates, as does stuttering, but mostly just motor tics and some vocal tics, but nothing that's too bothersome or impactful in his life at this point. But anyway, it just really was a good experience for us as a family to be able to watch that and to really understand, like, why am I doing what I'm doing, and understanding the stuttering experience a little bit more deeply. And then the next year I went to the Friends Conference and really was able to, I think for the first time, hear the stories of other parents with children who stutter, and understanding, you know, their fears, their questions, just their own journey in that process. And that was really impactful for me. I started teaching fluency disorders at that point at KU, and that time was also the time where, because I had invited some of my ISAD friends that I had met to come speak to my class, and just began hearing more and more about just bad experiences with speech therapy, and just confusion, and some of the things that individuals were communicating, you know, through their stories. And then I began reading the literature, and then realizing, oh my goodness, like, the literature confirms a lot of what I'm seeing, right? In terms of, we don't get enough training. So many SLPs feel inadequate and uncomfortable, and they don't feel confident approaching stuttering. And so everything I was experiencing and seeing, I was seeing confirmed in the literature too. And that just began to stir something in me. And one piece that I left out was that my sister has sons who stutter as well. And so definitely I'm fairly confident it's in our family history somewhere, not identified, but definitely I think there. And so she was also struggling to find an SLP to work with her sons. And at different times I was somewhat serving as a consultant for her, just trying to help her navigate all of that. But it just became more and more apparent to us that there was this huge gap in training and in just how we approach, you know, stuttering, and in our confidence level as professionals being the ones to work with people who stutter. And so that was the thing that really kept coming back to us. And so in 2020 is when we launched Spero, and we wanted really to incentivize more training and more involvement in the stuttering community. And that was our main focus, really, to provide this path for SLPs to be able to carve out time to do that, but then also giving them some funds, you know, making a stipend available to SLPs to be able to pursue more training and really grow professionally, in the area of stuttering. So that's the short of it.
And that's the short version. That's what's beautiful. Lots of friends popping in here on the live videos. We got Patty Bowman from Wisconsin and Joy Kling from Long Island and Farzan from Texas and Lucy from Alabama, Derek from Michigan. You span North America, South America, East, West. It's truly like Dorothy, clicking our heels and going way beyond Kansas. What do you think in that whole story, what do you think really shifted from the perspective of here you were a licensed SLP well into your career? How did your outlook shift or become enhanced? What did you shed and what did you start to incorporate? What changed as you went through the experience, not just as a professional, but suddenly as a mother? What do you feel shifted or changed in a way that was different than before?
I would say as a mom, just this sense of accepting differences in your children that I think, of course, all of us, we have kids and we want them to be perfect, if there is such a thing as perfect, right? We want our kids to be healthy and we want our kids to be able to have a full life and experiences that are positive, and nobody wants to see their child suffering or struggling with something. And so I think when our son started to struggle with communication, that initial fear and shock and, oh my gosh, what if this persists and what's going to happen and what's this future going to look like, and it was just for me a journey of it doesn't matter. It really, if it persists, we're going to be okay. And if it resolves, we're going to be okay. And really just accepting him and having the sense of it doesn't change who he is, right? Even if the stuttering had persisted, it wouldn't have changed who he was, his person, his worth, his value, in our lives and what he brings to our family. And so I think in that sense, that was the shift, I think, for me as a parent, just being okay with, even if it doesn't change, even if it continues, then he's the same person. As a professional, I would say probably the biggest thing was just viewing stuttering more as a difference as opposed to pathology, really understanding stuttering as human variation and just something that's different in the way that people speak, but not necessarily something that is broken or a pathology that has to be fixed or something that has to be eliminated. Or even looking back, it was funny, I happened to be looking at some old files that I had, and I found some goal banks from way back when, and I looked up my stuttering goals and I was like, I would be ashamed if anybody saw them today, just realizing wow, how one, little I understood, and then two, how much of my focus was fixing and eliminating, and really just due to my own ignorance about what stuttering is and how we can approach it in a more holistic way and how we can really view it in a way to help people just become the best communicators they can be, even if that means they're still stuttering. So that's probably the biggest shift in terms of just my approach. And then, of course, then that impacts how I'm teaching my students here at KU, and it's huge. And really, I've been able to incorporate the Transcending stuttering framework with my students as well, just really helping them conceptualize stuttering treatment, if we want to call it that, but just, working with people who stutter, but really being able to think about what does the knowledge component mean? What does adjustment mean? What does acceptance mean? What does advocacy mean? And being able to give students maybe not a cookbook, because there is no cookbook, but a framework, to work within and to really think about stuttering differently.
Wow. Well, there's nothing more gratifying than seeing things going beyond the places you intended, kind of like your song, once you put it out into the world. You know, it's there for people to enjoy and to reflect and take from it what they can. So for me, it's deepest sense of gratitude to you for finding ways to bring that framework to others. And then it's been cool seeing you and other clinical instructors kind of jamming around that. Very, very cool. So would you share with us one of those like nauseating old school goals as compared to one of the new school, or like what are you informing your students? Like I think there's a lot of conversation around us, right, as professionals in this space. I don't know, we can go for it together and work it together, or if you want to just share, because I think, you know, you could talk at 10,000 feet, or we can kind of like be right level on the ground. What does a stuttering therapy goal of the past look like, and what does a stuttering therapy goal of the present look like? And I loved how you kind of stuttered a little bit, stammered a little bit, hesitated a little bit when it came to understanding stuttering therapy, because yeah, I think it's like understanding basically any condition. In this case, our condition of interest might be the experience of stuttering, but it's not about treating per se. It's like understanding. And from that point of understanding, we create opportunities and choices for the person who stutters, for the parent, for the professional, for the teacher, for the ally. So in my mind, that framework, the Transcending Stuttering framework, is really that. It's a way to just organize and open up windows of understanding for all the stakeholders. But I'd love if we maybe could share with the listeners what would be an example of like an old school goal, and maybe practically what would a new school goal maybe look like. We could bounce it off each other, and then we'll go to the seal. Talk about the seal.
So, an old goal, I don't have them in front of me. So I just remember that the ones that I looked at recently, just, you know, always, it was using X strategy or tool or whatever to keep from stuttering, right? So in some way to stop the stutter, to avoid, you know, whatever that may be. And I would say a new goal would be that really the approach, right? So that we're approaching communication differently. So it's approaching speaking situations that may be difficult. And yes, can strategies be used to lessen physical tension, to enable someone to feel that they can stutter more easily or whatever it may be? Sure. But really the focus is more the approach behavior of approaching difficult speaking situations, following through, being willing to speak up in class, or being willing to make an introduction or give that presentation, or, you know, just, so really, and I'm thinking more in terms of like school-based, right? So how do we help students be able to really show up and to not be afraid to stutter, but be able to really reduce the fear of talking, the fear of stuttering, so that they can communicate the things that they want to communicate. I mean, I know that's still kind of broad, but.
Two things come to mind. I mean, first of all, you said it beautifully, but shifting from a fluency-focused goal bank and moving towards things within the frame of communication, within the frame of delight, within the frame of connection. So, and the other big one that I'm borrowing from Michael Boyle also, you know, and Seth Tishner, it's okay to talk about stuttering. You know, not only is it okay to stutter, it's also okay to talk about stuttering. So a goal could be that this young person is able to describe their stutter, that this young person is able to describe what are some things that make it easier for them to communicate with other students, educators in the classroom, etc. What are different situations, the different contexts that they find easier or harder? And that's communicating to others how they can be an ally, and we'll get to the ally seal. And then the dyad, I think leaning on the world of aphasia, we do spend a lot of time, as we should, leaning on the broader world of disability, the broader world of autism and understanding and advocacy and reducing stigma. I think there's also something to learn from the world of aphasia, where we talk a lot about the shared responsibility of the speaker and the listener as a dyad. And I think that that could be something we also bring into the self-advocacy side of goals and things like that. How do we enlist the listener, enlist the teacher? With that, I just wanted to touch that, just show that we can take these lofty ideas and bring them down. I'll drop one other little exciting thing I can't contain. which is, as part of this platform, the Transcending Stuttering framework is this idea. It's a way of thinking, the framework. We've also lined up every month of the year, right into the spring of 2022, a monthly guest speaker who's going to give a masterclass workshop. So last week was Dr. Phil Schneider, my father, my teacher, mentor, and the GOAT, greatest of all time. We have
Michael.
Oh boy.
Right.
Well, we have a couple people lined up. We have this Sunday, Michael Sugarman talking about mindfulness and CBT and self-care. That's going to be a series, a deeper training for SLPs. And you can get all this information at on Instagram at Schneider's Speech on the bio, or go to lu.ma/transcending stuttering. But Nina Reeves, it's coming up, I think, in March. She's going to talk about how to set up IEP goals.
Awesome.
That are meaningful and holistic. And the month before that, we'll have Scott Yaris talking about holistic assessment. So taking lofty principles and things that are very timely topics that we need to talk about, bringing it to the front line, helping those school-based SLPs work better, do better, more wholesome work, but also fulfill and tick the boxes you need to tick and check if you're working in a different institution or system. Which brings us to something we both care about. There are far too many parents of young children, not so young children, young people, adults who are looking for support, who may be looking for a professional that can help them. And as many speech language pathologists as there are in America, I think about 150,000 registered with ASHA, there's only a very small number, a very, very small number, that have a deep interest in taking the extra step to be ready to really serve this population. So tell us a little bit about what Spero Stuttering is doing to address that shortage, address that the demand of people looking for help. They can't find good help. There are a lot of great people sprinkled around the country. There are a lot of great organizations already doing great things, like the Board, Stuttering Foundation, and others. But what's the role that you see, Spero Stuttering filling in a unique way, which I think is remarkable?
I would preface that by saying it wasn't until my journey began that I really understood the difference between being a generalist and a specialist in the context of just our huge, large field of speech language pathology. Our scope of practice is huge, and we are expected to be able to treat so many areas. And so I think I understood for the first time what that meant. And there is a wonderful path to become a specialist in the area of fluency disorders. But it is, of course, rigorous, as it should be, and it is available to anyone. However, it's not always fully accessible in the terms of some of the requirements, or just there's a good number of clinical hours that have to be obtained. And so, for example, if you're in a school setting, you may not have access to that many children who stutter. And so you may not be able to, even if you have a specialized interest in stuttering, you may not have access to the children or the clients to be able to obtain those clinical hours. And so anyway, long story short, we felt like we needed another path, not necessarily a better path, but just another path to make training and involvement in the stuttering community not only easier, so an on-ramp in a sense to be able to get more training, and then also recognition for that training for the SLP, so that a parent looking for someone, if they don't have a specialist who is readily accessible to them in the area that they live, that they could look for, okay, if not a specialist, then which generalist might know more than the average SLP? And who can I go to and trust that they are more well-versed or more confident, more knowledgeable about stuttering, so that the speech experience, whatever they pursue, that it would be, positive for their family. So that's where we came up with the Ally of Stuttering seal. And so the speech language pathologists, anyone who's interested is able to apply for the seal. And it's just really, again, a recognition. It's not a certification. It's not something that's endorsed necessarily by ASHA, but it is a way that the speech language pathologists can demonstrate their commitment to more training. So there's an initial training requirement, and then in terms of just number of hours. There's also an involvement in the stuttering community requirement, which could mean attending a conference. It could mean being a part of a support group, or, there's lots of ways that you can demonstrate that involvement. And then it's also a commitment to ongoing training at regular intervals. So you're essentially saying, I'm committed. I'm going to prioritize stuttering as an area of professional growth. And so then we're able to connect families to those allies to say, this person is not a specialist, but they have made this commitment to more training and more involvement. And so generally, our hope is that that would mean better treatment outcomes or better communication outcomes, for the child and for the family. So that's it in a nutshell.
Awesome. So if people want to find out about that, just to drop that detail, follow up, you can go to Spero Stuttering. That's SP like Peter, Spero, S-P-E-R-O, SperoStuttering.org. Is that right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And you can see a lot more about Spero Stuttering. Now, as a segue, in addition to all the different hats, we've spoken about Anna Paula Mumy as the mommy. We've talked, how'd you like that one? And we've talked about the God calling. I like that. It kind of like reminds me of Moses at the burning bush. You had your own burning bush moment there. And we've talked about the evolution of a generalist with classic good professional training, and how that shifts when you start to have a personal connection, a personal lived experience relationship, whether it's your own with a loved one, certainly with a child. It changes your outlook in very meaningful ways and in very lasting ways, and you're paying that forward. We talked about the Transcending Stuttering framework and bringing that to the students and beyond. Let's go to your research interests, and I'll just drop, in addition to Michael Sugarman this Sunday, we also have Dr. Naomi Rogers lined up in November, talking about the social side of stuttering, thinking about social cues and ambiguity, and all sorts of things that relate to the experience, both how people see, view, understand people who stutter, and then also how people who stutter see, view, and look at the world, and the impact and the understanding that stuttering has in that way. You are doing some very important work, and I would love to spotlight that and share that, and also just say, we want to use this platform that you're listening or watching right now, as well as the Transcending Stuttering platform, to really support the good work of people in university doing the research to create a light of understanding in places that are far too misunderstood. And by bringing together the academic researchers, academic instructors with the frontline clinicians, that's a word I learned from Anna Paula, the frontline clinicians, working the streets, not exactly, but working in those schools, in what's considered really the place where most young people are getting speech therapy funded through the Department of Education or through the government, or those clinics, to support them and give that bridge of access to the researchers, to have access to the frontline people, for the frontline people to have access to the researchers, and of course also to create a space to learn and listen from people who stutter themselves, parents, teens, adults, children. So without further ado, what can you tell us, and how can we help you in the exciting research that you're doing?
Yeah, so in my research, I have been able to kind of merge my love of stuttering, but also with my love of bilingualism, and just I'm raising my kids bilingually. They have been learning Portuguese since they were babies, and my husband is an English speaker, so it's been a little bit more difficult journey for us to really give them that fully bilingual experience, but they're doing great. And I wouldn't have done it any other way, because I feel like my children when I see them interacting with my aunts and uncles in Brazil and cousins and my parents, and when they were alive, it just made all the difference in the world. The fact that my kids were able to connect with my family in a deeper way and really felt at home in Brazil, which is what I wanted. And so even though I would say raising kids bilingually in the US, especially when Portuguese is your home language, it is difficult. It's not been an easy task, really a challenge. I say it's an uphill climb because there just aren't very many opportunities, to facilitate that and to get my kids excited and motivated about Portuguese when, of course, they go to an English speaking school and all of that. But anyway, but bilingualism has been, of course, a part of my life, and the gap that I saw when I first started working as an SLP was how so many professionals were still recommending that parents stop speaking their home language with their children. And so if there's any communication challenge, usually the culprit becomes, oh, it's the bilingualism, right? It's too much effort, it's you're confusing them or this or that, which none of it's backed by research. Our brains have an amazing ability to learn language, even when there are issues that compromise language growth or learning. And so my first 15 years, I guess, of my career, it was really about trying to support monolingual SLPs in how to approach assessment, how to approach treatment, and really keeping the language of the home central. So encouraging that families continue to do that, and that they be, sources of language input for their kids. And honestly, over time, then I began to realize that in my own family, I owed just my mom and really her wisdom, because there was pressure for us to switch to English when we first moved to the US. So I didn't come to the US until I was almost 11, and I didn't speak any English. We started school right away, and I had a little dictionary in my hand, and that's what I used to get around and to figure things out. And there was pressure for us to speak more English at home so that we would, speed up our own learning, but then also speed up my parents' learning. It took them years and years and years to finally feel comfortable in English. But my mom intuitively knew that we needed our home language to remain Portuguese, because we would have become like strangers in our own home, because there would have been this disconnect, a language barrier in our family had we lost our ability to speak Portuguese. And so she was very adamant about nope, we're going to speak Portuguese. And honestly, it's kind of funny. If I think back, the 30 some years that we lived here while my parents were still living, I can say I never had a conversation with my parents in English ever. I cannot think of a single instance where that was natural or where it felt normal. It was awkward to do that. And so we, of course, spoke English kind of amongst ourselves in terms of the siblings, because we were in school together. We had English speaking friends and all that. But with my parents, it was always Portuguese. And if that had not been the case, I just see how our family dynamics would have changed. There's so many detrimental consequences to removing the home language. And so that's what my work really focused on, is trying to educate SLPs, professionals, families, in terms of the value of maintaining the home language. And so then with stuttering, that question comes too, right? Your child begins to stutter, they're bilingual, I'm bilingual. When my son began to stutter, I'm like, okay, is there something to this? Am I causing additional stress, or am I adding this linguistic component that I shouldn't be adding? So then you start kind of questioning yourself. And so I wanted to really understand, what does the literature say? And so my most recent research project was on really trying to look at the literature that speaks to bilingualism, and are there, does it create a greater likelihood that, they would stutter because they are bilingual, or essentially the question being, does bilingualism cause stuttering? That's kind of the bottom line, right? And so, so I did a literature review, and I wrote a perspectives tutorial that hopefully will get accepted. I don't know yet. I submitted it a while back. Still waiting to know if it will be accepted for publication, but I hope so, because I feel like I was able to provide some practical tips and just principles to abide by, to really think about, like, how do we approach bilingual kids, and then kind of with this stuttering lens, or bilingual children who stutter, taking that into consideration a little bit further. So anyway, that's my most recent research, and I actually, yes.
Oh, good. You're about to drop something. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I did a 3-minute presentation of my research for this competition called the 3-minute thesis. And it's
perfect. We could do the 30-second or the 3-minute. We got time. We want to hear. That's what I wanted to dig up, to get like a few kernels of wisdom that you feel you could share with us as a result of your exploration there.
Yeah. So go listen to my 3-minute speech. But if I get to the next round, then also vote for me. There's a People's Choice Award that's tied to this competition. So, but really, I would say the biggest takeaway is there is no research that justifies asking a bilingual child to become monolingual, whether that be a child who stutters, whether it be a child with autism, or a child with Down syndrome, or a child with specific language impairment. All the research in those different areas demonstrate that we may see similar deficits across their languages, but it's not necessarily going to make them more susceptible to maybe, worse outcomes, or that, it would in some way be damaging to them. So there's really no research to support removing the home language. And really what the research shows, so I looked at other research in areas of like psychology and early childhood education and so on. And really that research points to like what the benefits of bilingualism are, and the benefits to the family, and the benefits to emotional health, and the benefits to, cognitive processes and all of that. So, so that's what my most recent research, just the nuggets, I guess, from that.
We're gonna pop the 3-minute presentation into the comments here. We've got some others, but if you want to upvote Anna Paula on that link, do that. If you want to just drop a whole bunch of likes and loves right now. If you have any questions you want us to squeeze in, we're ahead of schedule, which never happens. It's because we're such a fluid operation right here. We're like the tin can man who got oiled up, That's awesome, Anna Paula. I think what I'm hearing from you, and it just brings me back to thinking about some universal principles that we hold dear, cost benefit analysis. And like, you could look at bilingualism and assume, oh, that's probably part of the problem with any of these things. And the research is resoundingly showing us that there's no basis for that.
Mm-hmm.
And even if there was, or let's say there isn't, the unseen or unaccounted for piece is you take a family that has a value of Portuguese or has a value of Chinese, spending a lot of time in New York, we've got Yiddish speaking communities, we've got Chinese speaking communities, we've got Spanish speaking communities, and my wife and I got married, lived in Queens. I think of all the United States, Queens has the most languages spoken for any county across the 50 states, maybe in the world. Mm-hmm. And what's the cost, right? So there might be a thought of benefit of like eliminating the bilingualism, but what's the cost? Right. And I think that has to be looked at. So anytime we're asking a family or considering for ourselves, I have problem X, maybe I should just cut this out. I have financial problems, let me eliminate the gym membership. Well, hold up a second. What's going to happen if you cancel the gym membership? You're going to stop working out? You're going to stop being fit? Like, if you're not using the membership, that's one thing. But if you're using it, what's the cost of not exercising? Mm-hmm. Sure, it's going to put a few more bucks in your pocket, but it might put a few more something else in your bloodstream, so cost benefit. And I think that's something that I've really come to think about broadly through the work of Chris Constantino, thinking about what's the cost of using a speech strategy? What's the cost of not getting professional support there's a lot of reason, as we've talked about, not every therapist knows what they're doing. But what's the cost of not getting the support that you feel like you need? You should be cautious, but there's also a cost and a tax of kind of doing it on your own if you're not finding that you're doing swimmingly well. So that's just like quick reflection.
Yeah.
Now, there's also my favorite assessment tool, and I think many of us appreciate the value that was brought into the world through the OASIS.
Yes.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about it, and you're doing something incredibly exciting. There's a part of the world that doesn't speak English. And Scott and Stuttering Therapy Resources, big shout out. You can put the link there in the comments. They've done an incredible job, and I had a small part to play in one of these translations. They've done a lot to bring it to a lot of languages. You're playing a part to do what? And which parts of the world will benefit from this?
Yeah, so the OASIS was translated into Portuguese a few years back. I think it's been, oh gosh, maybe 8 years or so. But there has not been a validation study done on the Portuguese version of the OASIS. And so another component that I wanted to bring into my clinical doctorate was understanding the experience of stuttering in Brazil. And like I mentioned before, my connection with the Oficina de Fluência, which is led by Daniela Zatzkowicz and also Luciana Contesini. They have just opened my, I guess, access to adults who stutter in Brazil and just the experience of stuttering in Brazil. And I'm really understanding more of that there. And I just wanted to do something that would involve Brazil, because Brazil is my love. And it's so interesting because even though I've lived here for 34 years, I think now, I think it's 34, I still feel more Brazilian than I do American. And I still feel more connected, and somehow like Brazil still feels like home to me in a way that I can't explain almost, because I've been so far removed for so many years. But there's something about just, and I think that probably largely had to do with my parents, but just the connection that I feel and that I just have there. So anyway, I wanted to do something, and so I was like, hey, Scott, what could I do here? And so he recommended that I do this validation study. So that'll be my next project. And I might get to do it in Brazil. We'll see. If not, it'll be via Zoom. But there's this grant that came up that I've applied for. So fingers crossed that I'm going to get funded to be able to do this in Brazil. But if not, it'll still work out. But anyway, so it'll be just an opportunity to investigate that tool a little bit further and validate its. So we're looking at, validity, reliability in the context of using it with Brazilian adults who stutter. So that's it in a nutshell. So yeah, I'm excited. I love the OASIS tool as well. I use it. I think as I've grown as a clinician, I realized how the impact of stuttering is so much more relevant than the actual stuttering itself, and just how the impact of stuttering changes how people live, how they think, how they approach life in general and participation in life. And so I just believe it's such a good tool, and I just would like to contribute in some way in Brazil. And I will just kind of put a plug here for when I stutter in Portuguese. So I did get to, through my friendship with Daniela, we were able to translate when I stutter and do the subtitles for it. And we screened it in Brazil back in 2019, and we were able to really bring it to the Brazilian public, and it was very well received, and that was an exciting project. And it's now on the, it's being offered as in-flight entertainment on the TAP Air Portugal airline. It's been viewed already thousands of times, and it's just exciting that, just the things that we've been able to do, my collaboration with them, and how we've been able to just bring a little bit more to the public in terms of just understanding the experience of stuttering. So
here's a little secret. First of all, I'm inspired, and I'll tell you why. But I have some time on airplanes pre-COVID, and looking forward to coming to ASHA. I know some people are going to be there. Looking forward to see you. Let me know. Connect. On the plane, so people ask me all the time, oh, you do work with people who stutter. Have you seen the King's Speech? And I'm like, at least 20 times, because Delta had it on the in-flight movie system. And I tell people I saw it at least 20 times, and I cried at a different spot each time I watched it. So I need to talk to TAP Airlines, because clearly they're onto something. Delta needs to get more of the stuttering documentaries in English for me on the Delta system. But that is pretty epic. It's one thing to translate, it's another thing to get that kind of distribution. So big shout out to John. I gave him a shout out in the comments. If you have more people to mention in the comments, please drop comments and links. So Anna Paula, I'll just say why I'm inspired. I think of you as a role model and inspiration, because on the one hand, you had one little person who stutters, and you cared deeply, and you leaned in. And all of us can take a lesson from that. I certainly am. You know, like each person, whether it's the janitor I bumped into that I told the story about, or that one person that isn't even on your caseload if you're a therapist, or isn't in your classroom if you're a teacher, but you know there's something they're going through, and you know that you have a little extra dose of empathy, a little extra dose of understanding, being a champion for one. At the same time, Anna Paula is involved in this research that spans the country, 50 states. And then beyond that, she's teaching her students. Beyond that, she's bringing Portuguese translation to the greatest tools that are out there, collaborating with great colleagues and researchers and friends, and then translating the subtitles for movies. The opportunity we have today to collaborate, to transcend boundaries, to transcend the definitions of what roles we play, whether we have a PhD or this recognition or that recognition, we all have something to contribute. So I'm inspired to think about how I can make contributions by the expanse of everything you're doing and the generosity of spirit. And from the first conversation we had, the collaborative spirit. That's the spirit we need to cultivate, especially in a world that's so more divided than we want it to be and than it needs to be. Any parting words, either what we talked about right before we started hitting record, or just any parting wisdom of wishes for the future, dreams for the future?
I would just want to again encourage SLPs to access the funds that we have. You know, there are Spero stipends. We have had fairly small numbers of applicants that have you know, just submitted something. And so I just really want to encourage SLPs to, if you don't need, you know, that additional training or the stipend, but that you share it with others, that you let other people know, hey, there's funding for you. You know, as a school-based SLP, we do prioritize school-based SLPs just because, like you said, we feel like they are the frontline clinicians. But that's not to say that a person in private practice or in another, like a clinical instructor or in some other role, you know, wouldn't be eligible. They are. And so I just would want to say, help us get the word out. You know, there's a lot of people I think that could benefit from extra funding to be able to get training in an area that we just don't get much in. The other thing that I didn't mention too is we are funding some research. So we have a scholarship that was actually established in honor of my dad, who passed away last December. And so it's very special to us. And ooh, I'm gonna get emotional now. Oh my goodness, I was not expecting that. So I lost both of my parents in about a year and a half span. So it's been a rough couple of years in our family. We've had lots of adjustments, but anyway, so we just wanted to honor my dad's legacy and his vision. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna just lose it here. To bring us all to the US and to really help us be able to make an impact. And so anyway, we have this scholarship for grad students and doctoral students who are doing innovative research in the area of stuttering. And it is specifically geared for minority students, because we just feel like that would be something that would be close to his heart, based on our immigrant experience and just bilingual experience. And so anyway, that's available. So I just would love to spread the word that that's there, because a lot of people don't know. And I guess, I don't know, that's all. I feel so grateful and just fortunate to be here. And I appreciate you taking the time, to give me the space. And I really, I feel so fortunate and grateful. So going back to gratitude, that, I've been able to walk in this calling that I feel, and just the sense of joy and just gratitude that comes from that, just feeling that, I'm doing exactly what God has gifted me to do, and that I can do it with pleasure and joy, and with, giving it my all. And then too, I think, honoring my parents in that, because I'm here because of their sacrifice and because of their vision and their wisdom, and how they raised me and loved me, through all of it. So I just would say I would want to honor them, to just, in my, just all of it, just how I got here. And I felt that so in such a real way when I was in Brazil, and I was speaking to the Brazilian Stuttering Association conference participants, and we had just screened When I Stutter, and I was up there, and I just had this kind of surreal sense of like, wow, all of my life has prepared me for this, in a sense, just being there, being able to, share this in Portuguese with Brazilian people, and, just being in my home country. And again, just thinking back to just my parents' sacrifice and everything they did, for us to have these opportunities, and to be able to do the things that we love. And so anyway, I just want to honor them today. So I guess that would be my parting words.
1,000%. Listen, we got this far without anybody tearing up, so it was all at the right time. Your passion speaks for itself, and we're all better for it, that you shared so openly and vulnerably and honestly. I think when you get to the point of tears, someone really cares about something super deeply. It's not just lip service. And each of the areas of your activity speak volumes, and not only trilingual, but you wear many different hats in your roles and in your perspective, that not everybody has as many perspectives. Certainly it doesn't speak as many languages. So I want to thank you for that, and for being a partner in different things. And just to piggyback, if I may, what Anna Paula is saying is, in addition to helping speech therapists get this seal, there's also this funding opportunity. And the concept is not to hand out and entice people that aren't interested, but people that get this emotional and care this deeply. Funding shouldn't be the obstacle to you getting access to go further. So if there are opportunities, there are many different learning opportunities. Transcending Stuttering is offering a whole host, and there are others outside. I just want to share this screen real quick, and then just entice those who have that passion and wondered, well, where would I start, or where would I get the funding? Well, Anna Paula just said. So this is our Linktree/NiderSpeech on the Instagram. Here's the gratitude challenge. Here's the mindfulness CPT self-care with Michael Sugarman, 2 meetings this November starting on Sunday. Here's a one-off with Dr. Naomi Rogers, the social side of stuttering. Here's the courage muscle with Dan Greenwald. All 3 of these presenters are people that have passion and expertise in the area of the subject matter they'll be talking about, and they're all people that know stuttering from the inside. And I just want to showcase that we can all learn from each other. We all have something to bring. Professionals, researchers, people on every side of this experience have something to contribute. It's like standing on different sides of an elephant. You don't know what you're touching, but if you talk with one another, you can kind of put it together and see the whole thing and put the elephant on the table, name it. Hopefully it's a strong table, but I think together we've got a strong table, strong platform. If you have feedback about the podcast, as we're planning this next season, we've got some incredible guests lined up, but I'd love to hear your feedback, so feel free to drop it in the comments or send us an email. You can send an email to help@transcendingstuttering.co, or go to the website transcendingstuttering.co and send us a message. Anna Paula, thank you. Thanks for listening. Share this if you think it's worth hearing. And I wish everybody a great, great day wherever you are.